Wow. Always love that music. I know I comment on it every week, but it just energizes me, invigorates me. Sometimes I think we should start this session earlier than we start because we have some really great conversation as we're getting ready to get going. And I hope we can get back into some of that now that we're here. But first, let's introduce everybody, and we'll all introduce ourselves. And, I'm going to go first today because I keep putting you guys first, and I always, feel a little bad about who I'm picking first. So um, let me just introduce myself. Hello, my name is Stephen B. Henry. My friends call me Steve, and you can too. I'm a multi-niche creative, a digital content creator, an online presence consultant, a business success guide, and a personal development mentor. And that's a mouthful. I work with those wanting to start or expand an online presence, helping them get unstuck in their business and personal lives and move forward on their journey of success. I'm a Canadian expat currently living in the US in the state of Kansas. And you can find me on stephenbhenry.com. Cass, you go next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Cass Henry. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I'm a holistic life mentor. I'm interested in the bigger picture of what makes you, the mind, the body, and the spirit. I work with clients when they're feeling stuck and they're looking to overcome self-doubt and manifest their dreams. I'm here to give a new, different perspective. I work with my clients both in person and virtually, and you can find me on catastrophe.com.
Shelley Ann.
Hi, good day. My name is Shelly Ann Edwards Barron, and I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I am a gratitude guide and habit coach, and I've been thinking a lot about what I do because when I decided to infuse gratitude and habits together, it occurred to me that I really strongly believe that, in this concept of life begins at 40, when we hit 40, we tend to feel like, things start to ache in places that we're not used to, and life seems to pressure us. And so I believe that people over 40 should really be able to pursue their goals with joyous energy and not succumb to that pain and stress. So what I do is to help them start with that keystone habit of gratitude. So we look at how to say it right, making language and self-talk empowering, how to say it loud by making gratitude tangible and active, and how to say it always by establishing that daily habit of intentional gratitude. So that gratitude strategy, as I call it, that's the foundation for identifying and implementing other keystone habits that really help us enjoy life. So for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing and you're over 40 and you're thinking the aches and pains, it can't be all about this, find me on LinkedIn and we can have a chat about how you can really enjoy life even after 40.
Wow, they say 70 is the new 40, and let me tell
Yeah.
you, it does. It does hurt. Yeah, Gerald, go ahead.
My name is Gerald. I'm here in Scotland. I'm a self-image consultant. Pretty much like how you identify yourself, how you have that self-talk, like as Shelly Ann was saying, when you look in that reflection in the mirror each day, how you identify yourself and how is pretty much like what you're going to get from life. So that's pretty much it, giving you a sense of direction, looking a wee bit deeper to get to know yourself and get you pointed and started and moving toward the success that you desire. And you can get me on exquisite-lifestyles.com. That's spelled exquisitely, XQISIT.
Exquisitely, absolutely.
Nice.
And our topic today is building community. And I think that's a really interesting topic that, all coaches should embrace and understand. We speak as coaches, we speak to, the broad community, but we also coach coaches. And so we speak to coaches as well. And many of the people listening to our live each Thursday are coaches. And we try to provide information for them as well as the broad population. And community, I really feel, is an interesting topic that we can embrace. Um, Developing community, reaching out to the community. There's so many aspects of this that it's going to be interesting for me to see how we progress. We're not scripted. We kind of go with these things wherever it leads, and this is one that has a sense of direction, but probably a lot of detours as well. Who wants to jump in?
Well, I'll jump in at that note because I've always wanted to portray myself like a Billy Connolly personal development coach, pretty much like, and he would always say, if I go like spiraling off and telling you a story, like, and I forget where I'm away to, whereas I started off from, help me, just bear with me till we get back. And that's what we find ourselves doing here every week, isn't it? We start with a subject and then we go all intertwined with the things that's related to that subject, and off in that direction and off in that direction, and then hopefully we get pulled back on track again. So
I think that's a really wonderful point because everything is connected and everything is intertwined and interdependent. And I think this leads really well into Shelley Ann, what you were going to share.
The poem, the minute we decided on community, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. That line, "No man is an island." I know most people know that line, but there's an extra bit to it that says existing unto himself. And that is the part that I really wanted to work with, because we get the idea no man is an island and we kind of brush it off, but there's the idea that we feel like we are alone and we exist by ourselves, but we don't. We are part of a group. We're part of the human race, and that connection with others helps us really thrive. And if you look through most psychology and most research on the human condition, there's a saying that humans are social beings. And the reason for that is because we seek and we thrive in community. And so that's really what I wanted to start with in terms of, building community. The fact that it's not just something that we might want to do, it's something that really goes to the core of who we are and helps build us. And coming from that idea, when we were chatting before we went live, we I mentioned the term finding your tribe. And I've heard that several times and I've used it many times, finding your tribe. We talk about, if you want to be happy, find your tribe. If you want to, feel like if you belong, find your tribe. Don't just try to make it work where you are, because maybe it's not going to work there. And Cass, you mentioned something that I hadn't even thought about. And this is why it's so awesome having these conversations with international coaches, because we get so many different perspectives. So I'd love for you to share that, and then we can talk what it means about finding tribes and alternatives.
Yeah, I'm having some noise. I'm not sure if my mic is picking that up. My upstairs neighbor is vacuuming right now. Of course they are. So yeah, here in Canada, what I have experienced is that the word tribe is discouraged in that use. That tribe is an Indigenous term, and that reclaiming of the language and that terminology is important. And so people who don't come from tribes would be encouraged to use maybe like a crew. So finding your crew, your people, right? Instead of getting pulled into language that doesn't belong to us. And that's the main idea.
Yeah,
I was also
new to me.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I want to speak to that from a little different perspective, but kind of an interesting perspective. I'm Canadian by background. I'm living in the U.S., and of course, the Indigenous people here also have various claims. And I'm not sure that anybody can really claim language in that sense, from my perspective. Now, I'm an old white guy, so my perspective was educated in a different time. When I grew up in Canada, I was a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, but I was kind of partial to the Chicago Blackhawks as well. And down here in the States, there's been a lot of kerfuffle about teams being named after Indigenous peoples. And I'm in Kansas, where we have the Kansas City Chiefs, and there's controversy about that as well. And in actual fact, those names for the teams are given as a point of honor, not any kind of disrespect. They may be disrespected by certain people, but that's the people's fault that do that. It's not the language. And I think that in the spirit of broadening our understandings, we should be open to sharing languages rather than and the Cheyenne and the Blackfoot and the Crow. I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe it's the Cheyenne, that their name actually means the people. So should we not be able to say the people because that's what their name means? But the words the people are not their words. The word Cheyenne is theirs. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with giving in to people usurping language because they think it's theirs. Language is open to all people, to community. And if you're not comfortable yourself using the word, by all means, replace it with something you're comfortable with. But I don't think that any group of people, the community, should be able to usurp language and take it for their own use. When I was running a bulletin board system, I used a product called Wildcat. And at some point, Wildcat trademarked the phrase, the most popular bulletin board system. I think that was the phrase it was. It was on their package. But they weren't the most popular. They became the most popular, and that was a projection, but they weren't. At that time, there was another product called PC Board, which was decidedly the most popular. And I felt a little uncomfortable using that product with a lie on the package, just because it was a trademark that they were able to say it. Seemed wrong to me. And this kind of feels a little bit the same way, and I could be wrong, but it's the way I feel.
I think language has power, and I think that we give it that power. And I think that when a community of people is trying to reclaim a term that has been misused or misguided or inflicted against them in some cases, I'm thinking of like queer community and different language around that. I think the best thing to say is nothing about us without us. The idea that if they truly have a point of hurt or harm that comes from it, and figuring out how they're going to reclaim it, I think that it's okay to allow that to happen. You're right in some regards that we can't have all of language belong to people, but I do think that sometimes there are places where we make exceptions, and I can think of a few that I probably wouldn't mention here, but I think we can all think of a few that we're like, oh yes, that's certainly an exception. I wouldn't say that word. And I think that sometimes that's important to give those powers. Sorry, I cut you off, Shelley-Ann.
No, that's okay. I'm listening to the point, and I'm totally completely agreeing with you. And the reason I sort of, when you allowed me to share about the poem and so on, and I threw it back early because I wanted this part of the conversation to begin really early, because we're talking about community. And quite often we have this concept, like the no man is an island, etc. We take it from our personal perspectives, and we search for community because we want to belong. But then how do we understand the community and other communities And when they say things and they express themselves and they ask for, um, for respect for a certain word kind of thing, like we're talking about here, how do we manage that? How do we involve ourselves with respect but still keep to what we believe to? So the concept of community and belonging to community and building a community is so far beyond what we are hoping to get out of it. It's also about what we're going to be giving to it. And I really love that idea of, we could be right. We could say, well, hey, the word tribe, it's a word that we use to describe certain things, and but what's the harm in making an adjustment that isn't doing anything too significant to us if we make an adjustment for the sake of showing our understanding and love for another community? And I feel like that's a two-way conversation. And when we talk about community, it's not only what we can get, but what we can give.
Yeah, I'll just jump in there, Shelley Ann, if you don't mind. Just like when we're talking about a community and what you said, Steve, about it's up to the individual. Like how they portray that word and how they follow the word and how the words mean different things. But like for somebody to find the word, like it's up to how they view the word. I mean, just yesterday I was listening to a video, and it was pretty much like about political correctness nowadays, like how the world's became so sophisticated that it's messing with our self-esteem. We don't know what's right and what's wrong. We're afraid to talk about things in case we offend somebody. And then if we're building a community and everybody's coming in and wanting to change that community before it's even built because of what we're going to call it, I mean, we've not even started talking about a community yet, and we're talking about all the things that could go wrong with even the name of it. I could say, well, if they don't like tribe in Canada, it's more offensive. I'll say, well, let's call it a clan. Oh no, Gerald, but we're not in Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult discussion to have because you can offend people in the discussion, let alone people outside of the discussion, because we all have our own interpretations. And I think that there's many examples, and Gerald, you bring up political correctness, which I think is a load of crap. Forgive me for being quite so blunt, but it's in many cases, the people that are advocating political correctness are giving in to political correctness without really even understanding what they're doing. And I think that communication transcends that, and the use of the language should be universal. If one person or one group of people take offense at the use of a word, then they really have to think about how they're using the word as well. Their usurping of that word for their own use may be offensive to other people, but they don't seem to consider that. And we've got a word down here in the US that is considered not a word to use, and there's this sort of procedure of referring to words by their first letter, the S word or the B word or the T word, whatever the letter is at the beginning of the word. If you refer to the word, it doesn't matter what you refer to it as, whether you say a group of letters or you say the first letter, you're still saying the word. I knew a person before who used to go to great lengths not to swear. She was brought up in a Christian school and they really worked on stuff. And, she would say, oh my gosh, or I can't even think right now, but she had phrases for the phrases she wasn't supposed to say. Well, what's the difference? If you use a different group of letters to express the same feeling, you're saying the same thing, even if it isn't the particular word that you're not supposed to use. And so um, we're not really talking about communication today, but community, communication. It is what happens with a community. To be a community, we need to communicate. And so, yeah, go jump in, Shelley.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry to laugh. We have a comment, son of a biscuit eater. I think
There we go. Thank you for that. Absolutely. And yeah, when you do these sort of things, you're not hiding the emotion by hiding the word, and so or hiding the
I
meaning by
want
hiding
to
the word.
I want to jump in here and quote James Baldwin saying, "We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist." And I think that words can sometimes do that. I think words can harm, and I think words can take away from people their rights and their ability to live. And I think that right now in Canada and in the US and probably all over the world, I'm not very much of a news follower, but trans rights are a big deal. And a lot of the language that's around that is harmful and denying human rights. So I think that sometimes it is important, and words can be powerful, and they address communities. But I think maybe we should turn this specifically to community rather than a debate about words and language.
Let me just answer that though with one thing, because you led on from what I was saying. And while I agree with the sentiment that you just shared, I do disagree with part of it in that words do not harm. It is the intention behind the words that harm. And that's what we should be addressing, is the intentions of the people, of the individuals or the groups that express harm. They also have usurped words, taken certain words, and when we allow those words to, in their very nature, convey the harm, we've given in to what those harmful intentions are. We should be recognizing that words themselves do not convey harm. You may take harm from them because you allow that, but the word itself does not convey harm. It is the intention of the person using the word. And if we can get back to that, we would find that we can take control of communication and of words, and probably build a better community for it. I think that's one of the things that is there. But I agree. Let's go back to community, because I think community is so powerful.
Let me just say, before we go back to community, because I'm finding this so interesting that we're struggling to get started with community all through communication. And it's all about like how going back to no man's an island existing unto himself, whereas for them, we must communicate. I mean, who would you talk to if there was nobody else? You wouldn't be able to have this discussion, this positive conversation, or you could look at it. It's really up to the individuals communicating in as a community and through love, like you said, Shelley Ann. Like we all want the same thing. We all want to feel that we belong, and share and love and are valued and that community, whereas we belong and we feel safe and we feel comfortable. Whereas that opens up other windows, like for people coming into a community and trying to with different values and not accepting the values that's already in that community. Well, why are you coming into it then?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you said, Gerald, that we haven't started a discussion on community. And I feel like we did right from the get-go, because all of these conversations and these nuances that we're discussing here, these are all important parts of communities. and that discussion around community. Because I've often found that, when we talk about using that concept, and this is the phrase that I've been told when, we talk about finding the space and the people who help us thrive. We use the word tribe in Trinidad and Tobago freely, and it's okay. But when we use it and we say find your tribe, we usually talk about what we can give. And it's not always a conversation about what we're going to meet exactly and how we are going to engage with other people with other views. And there's this concept that once I find this group of people who value me, I'll never have a disagreement again, as if disagreement is the issue. And so am I love this conversation because then we get to understand that even in a community that helps you thrive, you're not going to think like everybody else. Other people are going to think differently. There are going to be different views. And that's not just okay. That is actually what's beneficial. That is how you learn and how you grow and how the community expands and becomes more than each individual in it. And I love the fact that we started this way, actually.
Yeah, you living in like an information silo, right? Where you only hear the views that you want to hear and you only hear the opinions of people that agree with your opinion. That can be almost deadening to the mind because you're never questioned, you're never challenged to think anything different than what you've thought all along. I think that that's a great piece about community and building community that is not identical to you. You're not looking for that cookie cutter person. You're looking for people
Mhm.
that lift you up and people that challenge you and people that keep your mind excited. I wanted to bring in here Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the idea that social belonging is an entire level of the pyramid. He says that friendship, romantic attachment, family, relationships, social groups, community, religion, political, all of these things are important for us to have in our lives so that we feel fulfilled. And otherwise that you could tip into loneliness and depression and anxiety. And being in that island alone, or being in a silo where everything you hear is like a bounce back of what you've already said, can feel very lonely and does not necessarily mean community. So, like in this group, I consider this a community that we've created together, but we don't always agree, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. It brings out so many good things, perhaps bad things, but it's arranged. It's a spectrum. It's a hierarchy, as you said, and that's so good. Gerald often refers to the puzzle, and I had a very good friend years ago who actually made puzzles, and he would take if you had a photograph, he could blow that up and print it on a puzzle, and he had a machine that cut them. In many cases, they're stamped with a die that cuts out the puzzle, and that's why sometimes when you get a puzzle in a box, you'll find a couple of pieces that are stuck together. The back paper hasn't fully been cut through, or if you look at the puzzle pieces around the edges, they're kind of domed downward into the edge, and so you have these little troughs when they're all connected together, and that's from where the die goes through. But he actually had a jigsaw. That's why they call them jigsaw puzzles. And he had a real jigsaw which used a very narrow band that cut the puzzle, and he could program it. It was one of the earlier programmable tools that he could program it to cut the pattern he wanted. And one day he got this bright idea. People struggle with puzzles, and they love the struggle, but they also hate the struggle. So he got this idea to make a puzzle that would be the toughest puzzle to do. So he made it all white, entirely white. And that was going to be really hard because you had no picture to go by to put the pieces together. And people hated it because they couldn't do it. I mean, it was you had to try literally just about every piece, until you found the one that fit, and it was there was no fun in it. It was just an exercise of trying pieces. So then he got the bright idea. Well, why don't I create a puzzle that's all white, but all the pieces except for the edge pieces are exactly the same. So once you put the edge together, any piece you take will fit anywhere, and you can build the puzzle with your eyes closed. People will love that.
Yeah, let me guess, they hated it.
They hated it because there was no challenge in it. Other than getting the edge pieces together, there was absolutely no challenge, and they hated it. So you can see how sometimes the extremes aren't as good as they might seem to be. They're bad. And so you have to think back together as the community. And in his case, as a puzzle creator, he had to think about what his audience would think of the what they were doing. What were they together for? As if the common ground was puzzle, and what does the name puzzle mean? It is puzzling. It's a puzzle. You have to work at it. And so you've got to create what that community wants. That's a little bit of advice for marketers who understand that their target audience, is a consumer of something, and you have to understand that. And so when we are working with a community or participating in a community, those can both be specific things. We could also be working against a community. If we have political aspirations that are different than another group, we might be working against them. And it's not necessarily bad. It can be taken to extremes. Keep that white puzzle in mind. It can be taken to extremes, and then it probably is bad. But the communication within and without communities exists, and we can work with that and see where it goes. But establishing a community, establishing any community is interesting. This group of four, this community that we have, kind of got established ad hoc. We didn't sit down and plan and say, what are we going to do and who's going to participate, and we just kind of over a little bit of time started doing some things and started bringing together a group of people. And I'm not even sure exactly how it got going in the first place, but out of something else, because I do know there was something else before, because I started it. And out of that something else, this occurred. And at what point it transferred from what I was doing to what we are doing, and that's the wonderful part of it, there was a transition and a community appeared. So sometimes it happens, and I'm sure one of us can think about it and lay out the timeline and get the details, but those aren't important. It's what it is now, and it's what it's going to be in the future. And as long as it keeps keeping on, and we've got this capability of sharing. Not only within the community, we share with ourselves. As I started off today, we had an amazing conversation before we got going with the session recording. As we gather together in the few minutes before we start, we talk, we share, because we're an active community. There's so much going on. Gerald, you came in just at the last minute today, and you commented what when you got here? What did you say?
About he's all laughing before I could hear what he's were talking about.
Yeah, and you were interested in it. You wanted to be part of what was going on because it looked interesting. Communication is not only words, but it's visualization as well. And so we bring so much together, and hopefully we share some of it out to the broader community. And that's an interesting term as well, the broader community, which involves many other communities, right? And people can be a part of different communities. Now,
Yeah.
usually there's some common thread, but there are differences. So
And I think
community
that's
is an
important
awesome.
to highlight. So I want to interrupt here just to, emphasize that when we are part of one community, it does not mean the exclusion of all else.
Yes.
We can be, and quite often are, part of different communities. And that is something that we should embrace and not feel that, oh, I'm part of this one, so I have to exclude that one. It doesn't work like that, because ultimately we're all part of the one. And we are the individuals who put boundaries here and there, but really and truly we're part of the one. And so it's an interesting idea that we have this word community and building community when we're all human. But I understand the nuances, except that we really ought not to think of exclusivity. I think that's the word that I'm looking for. This sense of exclusivity, more on the inclusion side.
Hmm. That's a
Makes me
powerful
think of
point
something
there.
like,
Let me just touch on this quickly. That's a powerful point about, and it goes back to Gerald's use of words and the meanings that are important. Exclusivity. That sounds like, we're a tight little group that's exclusive, that's good. It sounds positive, when in reality, the word exclusive means that we exclude from us. And so we, as you just mentioned, we want to be inclusive as a group, and that's so critical to understand the words that we use. Go ahead, Cass. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it makes me think of the climate crisis that we're having right now is a planet-wide crisis that's going on. And yet at the recent summit, they talked about, I forget what it's called now, a fossil, maybe they give out a fossil, and they gave it to Alberta because Alberta's got some things going on politically right now with like wind and solar energy, and so they were considered to be the lowest bar of climate critical right now. And I think that it's just silly that we allow these borders to be divisive in something like a climate crisis that affects everybody on every level across the board, to be able to say, well, you're one country or you're one province or one state, and you have these rules, and so therefore you're not going to meet your climate what's the word I'm looking for, your climate goals by such and such year. And we move numbers on paper to say things like your emissions versus your planting of trees, and none of that's true. It doesn't work. It's just numbers on paper, so it's recognizing that community is everybody. It includes everybody, right? And so finding out how to build those things on the smaller level, and then recognizing that they're connected, interconnected everywhere along the way.
I love that. That's so that's so I want to say intuitive, but no, incisive. So imaginative. You've brought a focus on something that I tend to kind of look on a broader level. And when you actually look at it as you mentioned, borders, climate doesn't observe borders. So when we observe borders to speak about it, we're doing the wrong thing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely awesome. And that's where communities come in, because there are two sides to the climate issue. And so there are, in a broad sense, two communities. For those who support and agree with the pseudo-scientific side of it, at the group that purports to understand the scientists, do we, because I put myself in that category, do we ignore the other side just because we think they're wrong? Or do we invite them in and embrace them into conversation? And will either side be willing to have a conversation? That's the interesting thing. We call this particular group, this community right here, we call it open conversations with international coaches. I mean, the fact that we're international coaches is we're as Shelley Ann says, we are, part of the part of the human race, the whole. We're all people, and yet we have a small community that we've put together. It doesn't exclude us from being part of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much to think about.
One of the points I wanted to bring up today is doing more of what you love. So if you're looking to build community, if you're looking to meet people, if you're looking to engage, the idea is to go out and do the things that you love to do and cross paths with community in the process. So, go to the library and research something, or go out and play a sport, or, go to a book club. Something I heard about recently that is really exciting to me, and I don't know where to find. So if anybody local wants to do this with me, instead of a book club, it's a reading club. You get together at like a pub or a restaurant, however many of you there are, you gather, you talk for a little bit, check in, just sort of say, how's it going? And then you just all open your books and read. And they're different books, different ideas. You can be studying for an exam, or you can be reading for pleasure, but you're just reading in community. And I love that idea.
That's so like buddy doubling for reading.
Yeah, community can be built in so many ways. And so doing more of what you already love will connect you with people who also love those things.
And in that community, somebody will say, oh my God. And everybody else will look up and say, what? And suddenly you've got communication going on because they found something in their book that caught their attention enough to make them exclaim, and it spread. Yeah, that's an amazing idea. When you said about that, when you started speaking and talked about going out to the library to do research or play sports, I look around when we have family gatherings and I see the younger people who used to, not only in my day, but in my kids' day, used to go out and play. We'd have a family, get together, Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, whatever it would be. And after the food was served, or before the food was served, the kids would be out in the yard playing, and you'd have to call them in to eat their dinner. Nowadays, they're all sitting around on their, playing sports games on their cell phones or whatever it is they're doing. And when it comes to research, they're on their cell phone, their tablet, their laptop. They're doing research, not going out to the library. We're losing community in that. And
I wonder if we're losing it, or if it's just changing form. Because I'll tell you this. The reason I say that is because my second daughter has a friend in I think it's Ireland. I can't remember the exact location. She has another friend in New York who she speaks to every day. They've never met in person, but they met through online communities. And she has another friend in some part of Asia that she checks in from time to time, but they've never met in person. And the beauty of this whole conversation is that I've never met either one of you in person, but we have a community. So I don't know that it's being lost. I think it's just changing. The whole idea of where you can find your community and where you can find the people who do the things that you enjoy. Because for me, coming from an island, we're off the coast of Venezuela. And when you have a world map the size of the average world map, you can't even find Trinidad and Tobago on that map. You have to zoom in to find these two tiny little islands just off the edge of Venezuela. So for me, coming out into the world, so to speak, it felt huge and scary, and I almost didn't do it. But I joined an online community, and then through that community, I met Stephen first, and then I joined another one, and then I met Cassandra, and then another one, and met Gerald. And so that is how it blossomed. So for me, it's changing, but it's a really beautiful thing as well. As it's changing, it's opening us up to so much more. And so when I think of my people and the people who I enjoy being around, it's not limited to my physical space. I have people all over the world, some of whom I've never met in person, but I consider really good friends. And we have that bond even though we haven't physically met because of the communities that we're able to build with the technology. So with the kids, I know there are some dangers and there are some limitations. And yes, we do need to manage it so that, for example, with my daughter, we have physical communities where there's no device, you go out and you have fun physically. But then the online world has opened up so much to her. And this is a child who was so shy, wouldn't talk to anybody. And now she's coming to tell me her friend, I can't even pronounce his name properly because it is not, combination of letters that I'm used to. And so I have difficulty with that. And she explaining to me that one of them, he's in primary school and he went to the fire station where he lives to see the fire engines and so on. And he sent her pictures. So she's sharing me pictures of her friend in this other country and what they're doing. And it's just so fascinating to me.
Yeah,
My
I
son was
agree.
able to travel to Amsterdam. We cut each other off again. My son was able to travel to Amsterdam to see a band that he loves and meet a really good friend from Estonia. And he would never have gone completely alone, even though he traveled from Canada to Amsterdam on his own. But knowing that he had this friend there at the other end that he was spending the week with, going to the concert and seeing the sights, made it possible for him to do that. And my son has extreme social anxiety, and he absolutely would never travel anywhere alone. And so for him to want to do this and to want to engage with this person and to he only met on a band related community, and so they shared that thing that they love in common, and they both went from their countries to meet in Amsterdam and go to this concert. Is just this fabulous form of community that has given him not only an outlet, but like encouraged him and challenged him to be able to do things that he would never do. And I think that the online community is amazing that way. In my youth, I traveled all over North America and got to meet people that I had only known online. And I lived a couple places for 3 to 5 months, just hanging out with friends and eating up my savings. But, it was a really wonderful experience to be able to engage with people who were more like-minded to me than necessarily. I grew up in a very small town, so it was not necessarily meeting the people in school that matched who I am. But being on an online community, I got to be able to connect with people who I felt similar to, really felt like I'd met my crew.
Yeah, I'm tremendously excited about the opportunity that's here. I pine a little bit for the loss. I have the long experience that I grew up before computer, BC, and I then embraced computers and was involved in the whole computer internet environment from its earliest stages. So I have
Hold on, I gotta jump in here. BC, before computer.
That's right. Yeah, that's the point. And so I'm old. Yeah.
Talk about interpreting words, letters.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
But I have experience in both worlds. Most of the people that I provide services to today never experienced a time without computers, without home computers in their life. And many of them have never been without online presence. And, so they don't have that other experience to consider, worry about, pine over, whatever. And it's interesting to see where that dividing line is. And so, you have people today that we've got a whole generation now of people that are, never having experienced not having a device in their hand.
I'm so glad you shared that and what Cass put up. I was going to read it in a bit. I was waiting for Steve to finish, but I love that comment. Hi, Catherine. Um, Community is built on heart investment, not necessarily physical location. I absolutely love that. That should be on a T-shirt. Hint, hint, Catherine. Make it a T-shirt.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh,
I was going to say
absolutely.
that when I mentioned the library, our library has had to pivot. And it's not just about books and research. They have a maker's lab where you can go in and print posters and 3D print things and make buttons and stickers and all kinds of print media that you might like. And they have an entire computer lab and printers for people who, need to print off anything really. And so I don't even know everything that goes on they have at the library. I haven't been in a while because of physical reasons, but there are other services offered than just books, and a lot of places have had to pivot with online taking over so much of what they would do. You don't need an Encyclopedia Britannica, you've got Wikipedia, right? So why would you ever go to a library? Well, check out your local library. They probably have really cool events going on.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And which brings it back to, sorry, let me say this before I forget, because I forgot to mention it earlier. When you were speaking earlier, Cass, about, when you're looking to build a community, if you feel like you don't have the people around you who make you feel included and help you thrive, go out and do the things that you enjoy. It got me thinking about active gratitude, which is something that I work with my clients, making gratitude tangible. A lot of times we say it, but we don't live it in terms of making it active. And I feel like community is the same. While Stephen, you said that this particular community sort of evolved, we each had to play an active role to come together in the first place, and we had to play an active role in the evolution of the community. So it's not as if we're just sitting by and watching it happen. It is happening through our interaction and our involvement. And that's the thing with community. It doesn't just happen by itself. We actively communicate and come together to create the unity that makes it the communication unity. I guess that's where we get the community from. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. Um, it's astonishing. Last week, I said something at the end of our session that we had done so much, talked about so much, and it had gone so fast. It actually feels to me right now that we've been here for about half of our normal time, and we've got a whole lot more to say. And I just looked at the clock, and we're through almost all of our hour, and I can't believe again that this went so fast. It went even faster than last week. It was just an amazing conversation of things that were shared here. There's so much for each of us to pick out of it, and anybody watching to pick out of it. And some of it you'll agree with, and some of it you won't. And that's the beauty of it, is that you don't have to agree with everybody and you don't have to take a stance and disagree with anybody. You can just take from it what works for you. And, some of other parts of it will get into you by osmosis, perhaps. And you can't hear things and not have them affect you to some degree, even if it's a little bit. But we have achieved, as a community today, we have covered a topic that I had no idea would be controversial, and yet we got into some controversy. We handled that with care and aplomb, and I hope none of us offended anybody. I've not taken any offense. I know I've been pretty dynamic in my presentation of my feelings, but I think that we've been able to share, and we have the understanding that we can ignore or set aside what we don't agree with. But that's the power. We were here to talk about community, and we displayed community. I think that is a given, and we need to wrap up now. So let's go around the table and share again what our feelings, our takeaways, and our last statements need to be. Gerald, you go ahead. We've referred to you many times, and I think you've got a great deal of good stuff to share. So you wrap it up first.
You did.
There we go.
It's just so hard to package, because we're basically we started out talking about building communities, and then the first word, one of the ones early on, was isolated communities, separating communities, and I keep feeling that we kept moving away from the community that we hadn't built yet. And it's that community that we want to belong and feel that we belong to, like this group here. Once again, the group. So you're breaking down a community to a group, and then it's getting broke down to the individuals, and a group of people who agree to pretty much conform to the rules. That's the communication that's going on there. And then that's hard not to feel lost, like no man's an island. So that communication's got to be agreed upon, and they have to, like the jigsaw puzzle, all the way. There has to be a focus. There has to be a sense of direction. There has to be a purpose to build that community for what. That's why I love The Great Escape, because there was people from all different countries all in the one war prison camp, and the focus was, let's get out of here. So they all shared, they all contributed, to help. And it wasn't like, oh, don't be digging that tunnel that way. That's not how I would do it. It's like, listen, we don't have time for these debates. Get out of the way and let's get out of here. Work together and communicate and get along. So it's all about, like-minded people. So the world since COVID has been, I've never seen it as isolated ever before. Whereas when people are uncomfortable, they don't have the confidence, to get out and mingle and build the relationships anymore, build these communities anymore. And then going back to the words again, we're afraid to open our mouth in case we offend somebody, and community. Basically, it's all about communication. It's hard refining that as I was listening. It was like communication just sounded like community, because there can't be a community without the communication. And then at the end there, Kellyanne, you said unity. So, and we've kind of went a whole cycle. No man's an island, So, well, that's existing unto himself. Yes, but it has to get on.
You've touched on something really interesting that we may need to get into deeper later on, but you talked about full circle. We went from no man's an island through community back to unity, an island. So is a community an island? And if we separate ourselves as a community from other communities, do we become an island? No community is an island unto itself. And so we need to reach out from communities. As we reach out, our conversation before we started the video was a good conversation. And we had to get started on the video because we were at the time when we were supposed to start. We reach out from this community. Does that make this community better because we're not an island? We're not just getting together and discussing with ourselves. We're reaching out to other people. And the other people can tell us whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. We can't. We're inside. We can't measure the outside reach. But we get comments from time to time that tell us what we're doing and whether we're doing it right or wrong. That's kind of cool. Shelly Ann, your wrap up.
Yeah, I wanted to finish the stanza because I mentioned no man is an island and a bit more to the stanza, but I never got to finish the stanza. So I wanted to share it because that's really the essence of community for me. So the first stanza of that poem, which is No man is an island, the first stanza says, No man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. So we are all part of something. Even when we feel isolated, we're part of something. And to feel connected with that part, with the thing that we are part of, we need to be active with that and seek out the connection. It's not just enough for us to say, okay, we're connected, fine. It's not that simple when it comes to community. So I feel like mentioning, yes, we're connected, and part of that understanding is actively maintaining that connection.
Love that. Thank you. Cass.
One of the things we didn't bring up, so many things that we didn't get to, but that's okay. We got to great things, is security. That sense of belonging is a feeling of security. And, in the simplest, earliest times, you can't fall asleep without somebody there to watch your back, right? So, can you get away from the saber-toothed tiger kind of thing? So community gives you that sense of physical security, but I think now it's moved on to the sense of emotional, mental security. Knowing that you are connected, that you have a reason to wake up in the morning to do and be and connect. And I think community is pretty foundational to that desire of moving forward, right? So security is definitely a big point around belonging, community.
It's kind of a tribal thing. No.
You just had to, right?
I just had to. Sorry, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not sure that we think of cavemen as tribes, although maybe we do. I'm trying to think of Clan of the Cave Bear. We thought of them as clans. But you're right, that security is primordial. It goes way back to where we're there. And I think that's a key element of being together as humans. We have a need for that feeling of security. You've hit on something that is, I don't know how we missed it through this whole conversation, and it's a conversation of itself. Powerful. Keep that word security in mind for another time. Cass, you suggested where we're going next week?
Cheer. I think cheer would be a wonderful topic for us to talk about at this time of year, but also it's a good extension from community and communication, which we've been talking about. Good cheer or cheering somebody up, but just the general idea of cheer.
Be of good cheer, exactly. I was just checking the calendar to be sure. Our Thursdays do not fall on any holiday dates. We're good to go for the Thursdays coming up. So we will be here for the next 3 Thursdays of the month to see out the year. Next week will be cheer. I don't know where we'll go with that, but it's going to be fun and exciting. And with that, let's wrap this up today. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you for those out in the world, whether live or on the replay. We couldn't do this without you, and your feedback is genuinely appreciated. Take it away, Maestro.
Bye, everybody.